Canadian amateur boxing champion, Pan American Games gold medalist, Olympic Games contender, Canadian welterweight champion, Canadian middleweight champion, British Commonwealth welterweight champion, winner of 100 amateur fights against only 5 losses, 30 pro wins and only 4 losses. Chris Clarke has a record in the boxing ring that few Nova Scotia boxers can match. He did all of it as a self-taught boxer, a young man who learned fighting on the streets of Halifax's North End, stepping into a basement gym when he was 10 years old and falling in love with the sport. Termed a natural by locals with boxing know-how, he won his first official match at age 11 against a 16-year-old.
Chris had so much talent, and it was just natural talent. He, whenever he sparred, it just a natural flow to him, and he was 1 in a million. He was a good hitter, but his punches, not that he was a real big hitter, but he had strong combinations and fast punches that were, was not necessarily a one-punch knockout for artists, but he was 4 or 5, bang, 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 like right in a row like that there, which many fighters, when you're fighting like that, it's hard to throw haymakers where, some of the other guys were throwing haymakers. Chris was slipping and sliding and throwing 4 and 5 punches, hitting you before you knew what was going on.
In 1974, he won the Canadian Amateur Lightweight title at the Canada Games Championship in his weight class. A year later, at 19, he became the first Canadian to win boxing gold at the Pan American Games, defeating American Aaron Pryor, who was later to become an undefeated world lightweight champion. In 1976, he fought for Canada in the Olympics in Montreal. In his second prelim match, he was leading when his opponent headbutted him. The resulting cut ended the fight in the opponent's favor, and there was little doubt Clarke would have gone on to fight Sugar Ray Leonard, a future world champion, for the gold medal. He turned professional after those games.
Chris was a real unique fighter, and to look at Chris Clarke, you could say, I could take that guy. But to actually get in the ring, it was a different experience. He had a real unique style that fighters, he could avoid punches, slip punches, very quick hands. It was just unbelievable. But his influence to me was, I think, one of the main inspirations that I had as a fighter, watching Chris box, watching him grow, and as a fighter, watching him grow as an athlete. I said, wow, I'd like to do what he's doing someday.
Ricky's a Hall of Famer. We inducted him, I think, 2 years ago, and he loves you. Matter of fact, tonight he told me, and he'll tell everybody tonight, that he calls you his inspiration.
Without question, Chris had a huge heart. Anybody who ever saw many years ago the Chris Clarke, Clyde Gray fights, title fights, was phenomenal. I mean, the courage that this kid had against a veteran fighter who was the champion, and Chris just kept coming back, and Clyde would have him along the ropes, and Chris just kept coming back. People thought he was gone. He just kept coming back, and it was just unbelievable. And of course, the 11,000 fans that night had a wonderful time, and it's talked about today. Yeah. This event is still talked about in the boxing fraternity. It's still talked about. It was a great fight.
Those fights took place at the Halifax Metro Centre in 1979 and put 11,000 people in the seats each, the largest crowds ever to watch boxing in this city. Gray was a native of 3 Mile Plains and also a member of this Hall of Fame. He fought Chris for the Canadian and British Commonwealth welterweight title. Chris won on a technical knockout in the 11th round. Here's a Clarke quote. "I was a 22-year-old kid, and I went in with the feeling I was destined to win the Commonwealth title no matter what." He told that to Chronicle Herald sports reporter Steve McLeod a few years later. "I had it in my mind that if he was going to beat me, he was going to have to kill me." Chris recalled he said to Gray in the 10th round, quote, "Let's stop fooling around and get it on." He looked at me like I was crazy. That was the best fight I ever had, I think. Chris offered a rematch and lost it to Gray, and he will admit he was never the same boxer after that. He did take the Canadian middleweight title from Ralph Hollett a couple of years later, but was stopped in the second round of the rematch and it was kind of downhill after that. But no doubt he was a champion, at one time ranked as high as 10th in the world as a welterweight by Ring magazine.
I think he's right up there with the Blair Richardsons. And I mean, I know I heard lots of people talking about Blair and the other fighters that came up through Everybody Day and everything else, and these guys were all great fighters and great ambassadors of Nova Scotia, but I think Chris would have been right up there, right at the top with them. No question. He had a lot of heart. He didn't drop down. He didn't crumble under pressure. He stayed there toe to toe with anybody, and he was a determined, dedicated fighter that you know, put the time in at the gym and showed his skills every time he was in the ring.
I just want to tell you something, Chris. 2 years ago in Athens, I did boxing with Russ Anber. Russ has a show on TSN now, In This Corner. And Russ and I were out for dinner one night. And we were just talking about different things, and I said to him, who's the best Canadian amateur boxer you've ever seen? And he's trained a ton of them, and he's seen a ton of them. He said you. He said you. With 130 wins in 139 bouts through his 18-year career as an amateur and pro, for his work inside that squared circle, Chris Clarke merits entry into the Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame. Stand up and enjoy it, man. Look at this. I'm going to give you a pin and a plaque. The plaque presenter is Mickey McDonald, the owner-operator of Palooka's Gym. The pin presenter is Rick McDonald, the former professional trainer of Chris Clarke. So here we are, huh? All those years later, you told me earlier in the night, you say, I wish I had the hair I had when I was a kid. That's the way it goes. I know the feeling.
Yeah, you're a busy man.
Yeah, listen, what does it mean to you to be here tonight?
I fulfilled my dream. Boom. That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
You fulfilled your dream as a kid, and now it's fulfilled as an adult.
Exactly.
Can you tell me about, this amazes me. I don't know if you ever saw Aaron Pryor fight. He was vicious. Against Arguello, I mean, he was a phenomenal fighter. You beat him for Pan American gold. Do you remember much about that, or was that too long ago?
Yeah, it was fun.
I can imagine it was fun. How many people here, folks, just by a show of hands or applause, attended either of the Gray-Clarke fights? What do you remember about that special, I guess it was a 7-month period in 1979? That was, my dad took me to those. I was like a kid, and they were amazing.
I was a young guy with big dreams. And I did what I wanted to do. Tough fight.
What about you as a fighter? You heard what Ricky said and the other guys said, that you weren't really a one-punch guy. What was your style like?
Southpaw, quick. Bang, bang, bang. Move. Without getting hit.
Yeah. You bang, bang, banged more than they bang, bang, banged you, right?
That's the way it went.
That's the way it went. Folks, Chris Clarke. How about this fella? Thanks, man.